This is the Atari 8-bit podcast.
They said, how long? And we said, 18 months. And they said, we can't wait that long to put something out.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Dan Pinal contributed to the book Atari Graphics and Arcade Game Design with Jeff Stanton, a book published by Arrays in 1984. He was one of the programmers of Alternate Reality The Dungeon, which was published by Datasoft in 1987. He also created the game Stargate Courier, published by COSMI, and worked on the Atari port of Goonies for Datasoft. This interview took place on September 1st, 2017.
My education is high school, and I was doing a bunch of different jobs before 1980 when I picked up an Atari computer.
All right.
And got started. It came with the Atari Basic manual. I went through that, learned Basic, and wanted to do better, so I had to learn assembly and start that way.
Was this like an Atari 400 or the 800 with the real keyboard, or where'd you start?
Yeah, this is I got an 800 and a disk drive and the basic cartridge and Star Raiders, I think.
Of course.
Yeah, a must. I think that was the seller for it. And
all right, so you started teaching yourself assembly language, and it was just so you could make games, or what was your goal there?
Yeah, that was basically why I had an Atari, was because I wanted games ever. The 2600 had a basic cartridge for it, if you remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was like, oh my God. I didn't realize that you couldn't do much with 128 bytes of RAM, which was all it had. Which is why you got like maybe a 2 or 3 line program at tops before you were out of memory.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And I'd started seeing like computer games there weren't really arcades then, but in random places and random shops. And those looked really cool to me. There was, can't remember, besides Pong, there were 2 space games. I don't remember their names. One had a really nice cabinet. It was a nice colored fiberglass sparkly cabinet.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yes.
And another one was a vector game, based game that I think was called something like, might have been Star Wars or something. They had a ship, a line draw ship that looked something like an Enterprise, and you had a sun in the middle, and you try and shoot the other thing. And
right.
Like,
yeah.
That's cool.
Space Duel or one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Something like that. And yeah, so that got me really interested.
Sure.
And I've been doing it ever since.
Oh yeah, you still do that? Are you still in programming?
Yes, I still do. Yeah, I still work on games and mainly consoles.
Oh wow. All right. Well, normally I ask at the end what you do today, but let's talk about what consoles do you program for, and what can you talk about?
Generally, they don't like us talking about too much because we're kind of like the group that gets brought in when the original people aren't either getting the product done with basically when something is lacking in performance on a console.
Okay.
Is where we get called in.
Well, do you work on a console that exists now or some future thing?
I've got all 3 consoles on my desk, including the Switch, which is what I was working on today.
Oh, nice. What
a joy that is.
Yeah, it's a joy to program for?
Oh no, it's just so underpowered.
Oh.
I think I'm talking to you from my Pixel phone. I think it's pretty much the same processor, except it's got a better GPU. Yeah. So it's hard getting things to look the same across all consoles.
I bet. All right, so you've got your Atari and your programming in the assembly language, and you ended up. I don't know what order things came in, but I know you contributed to our game design book, and you worked on alternate reality, and you did another little game, Stargate Courier. So, how did you get into that, and what came first? And tell me what happened.
Let's see. I met Jeff Stanton at a users group meeting because he was basically an Apple guy, and I knew he had written a couple books for the Apple, and so I was trying to promote the Atari at the time, and said, "Hey, you should really get into this." And he eventually bought an Atari, started programming it, and we got together rather often, and we decided to write a book.
And he had already done the Apple book at that point.
He had done the Apple book. Yeah, he'd done Apple. Basically, I think it was the same title except Apple Graphics and Arcade Game Design.
Right. And
I don't think there were too many books on actually programming the Atari. I mean, there was D-Ray Atari, which, that was a bit technical probably for a lot of people. And some people need examples. And I thought, well, maybe people had examples of just not give them, here's the addresses of the hardware.
Right. Yeah, that D-Ray Atari was very down and dirty, and your book was a lot more, here's an idea and here's how we're going to implement it, sort of, and it was a better way to learn
and
it.
Maybe we can, put in some samples and I'm not even sure of the order of that, when that came, because that was around the time I was doing other things as well. And I probably was working on Atari games at the time. Yeah, I was. I was probably working on that Stargate Courier game, which actually, if you see it, is really an unfinished game. The original company went under, and another company, I think it was COSMI, which made like economy software.
Right. At
the time, bought it, and so I finished it up in a couple of weeks for them, and it was really incomplete.
Did you get a royalty off it, or was it just a flat fee?
Oh, no. Yeah, it was just a flat paycheck.
Yeah. And it sounds like you weren't happy with that game.
Not with how it shipped. I was hoping for a whole lot more, and it was going to be 48K, full game on disc, and they said no, we want something that will work on cassette and 8K of RAM.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very chopped.
I want to talk a little more about the Atari graphics and arcade game design book. So how did you and Jeff split up the work? I mean, did he just hand you his Apple book and say, here, translate this to Atari, or what happened?
On the chapters, I think, or anything that had to do with like actual code, I think those were probably mine. I haven't seen the book in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And probably a lot of theory talk is his, because he had very specific ideas on what makes good games and what things shouldn't be done.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably just a few of the technical parts and the code. Uh-huh. And I don't remember how much code is in there. I think there was like a breakout game, which I did, and I think I remember writing that in BASIC and assembly just to show the difference, because I figured a lot of people were probably coming from having learned Atari BASIC.
Right, and they could compare it apples to apples. Yeah,
they could hopefully wrap their head around it a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one thing that almost nobody took advantage of was when Jeff sold it, he had an offer in the book for an assembler for, I think it was, I can't remember what he wanted. Couldn't have been more than $10. But that assembler was probably the best assembler I'd ever seen. I don't know if you remember Cinesem.
I know Cineassembler, yeah.
Synapse. Yeah, that was the fastest, best assembler. And what we had which was written by Yves Lempour, the guy that did was it Pengo, the conversion for Atari,
Okay.
the arcade. Yeah, it's the same assembler, but it's a macro assembler, and so it had all the speed of CineSim, but macros as well, which I wrote pretty much everything in after I got my hands on it. The only thing that especially all the tools I wrote for the Atari for alternate reality, those are done in that.
Was this the FS macro assembler? Is that what it was called?
Yeah, that's starting to sound familiar.
Right. That's what it's. I'm looking at the back of the book here, and that's what it's offering. So.
Yeah. How much was it?
$50.
Oh, $50.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's pricey.
Yeah.
I can see somebody wanting to not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so was the Atari.
That's true.
I spent nearly $2,000 for my Atari because I got all the RAM, disk drive, which was like $550 for that floppy disk, and the cassette, and yeah, it was close to $2,000.
But it was worth every penny, right?
Oh yeah, it changed my life.
Yeah. Did it sell well? Did they give you any numbers on that?
No, I don't think it sold very well. I don't think it sold more than a few hundred. And I think there was something going on with the publisher. I'm not sure if they stayed around much longer, if they were having issues as well.
Yeah, I think that Array's publisher did not last very long at all.
Right. So I think that was probably a part of it. Plus, I guess by the time it came out, maybe there was probably more interest in newer hardware, possibly. But I think he had the Amiga and the ST coming out really close to that, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was working on alternate reality, we had the other machines there.
Okay.
So yeah.
So you worked on alternate reality, The Dungeon. I want to know all about that. How did you get involved with that project?
Let's see. I got hired by Datasoft, and this was after so many other places that started up and didn't last more than a few months.
Mm-hmm.
So I was bouncing around quite a lot, and I met Ken Jordan at one of those other jobs, and he was there at Datasoft, and I got hired, and very shortly we got put together for alternate reality, The Dungeon. It was originally Phil Price's game was going to have the city and the dungeon all as one, but but Datasoft really needed the money fast, so they had it. So it was split into two games, and so we were made responsible for the dungeon, and while Phil was still working on the city, and we ended up basically Datasoft hired one guy try and do a design for it, because they were going to start it as a full complete game rather than just a piece that was missing out of the city. And unfortunately this guy wasn't that familiar with games and what was capable, so he had all sorts of things that just couldn't be done or weren't practical. And so Ken and I just basically altered that, came up with ideas of our own, and that's what the dungeon was. But we still kept the world and everything. All the parts had to be in sync with the world that Phil had created, because there was, he had a whole 7-game series planned for that.
But the city and the dungeon were the only ones that actually came out, as I recall.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Ken and I were close to completing the dungeon for I think it was Amiga and PC. I don't think we were, because he was writing Amiga and I was writing PC. And I don't think we were doing an ST at that time, but it was probably thought it would get ported over very soon.
Mm-hmm.
But Datasoft had gone under. We went to the people that took over their projects with the same people I think that did Chessmaster. Those guys. And anyway, the project didn't last very much longer after that. And somewhere I have the code for it. Somewhere
nice.
Ken still has the code for it. And
if you find it, we would love to digitize that and make that available for people who want to learn from it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure we both lost the code for the dungeon. I had a pack of discs, which were backups of everything, and they were all unreadable after when I tried looking at reading them like 10 years ago. It's like, great, I've lost everything.
Oh.
Let's see, but most of the code for the game was written on an Apple II using the Merlin assembler, because they knew they could make that cross-platform, so that we could write one set of code, and for all three game units. And let's see, and they were also able to put accelerators on the Apple, so it was running like at 8 times normal, clock speed, so it could build really fast. And let's see, and I wrote a tool to go with that, because I bet there's a product for the Atari you've never heard of. It was an operating system board. It replaced the Atari operating system. Basically, you took the chips out of your operating system, put it in this board, and you had 16K of RAM overlaid on it. So you could flip it out and have your own operating system. And that was how I wrote. That was how I wrote the dungeon for the Atari. So the game could be there, but I could have a full debugger running on the console at the same time that I had written. Cool. And that was very handy, because because it's a RAM, so I have my own screen. I don't disturb the game screen. I can interrupt it at any time, come in, assemble, disassemble inside there, write data out, change things. And that was like really, really handy. And there were a couple of prototypes for this, and I got one of them, and I don't think it ever came out, because this was going to be made by Datasoft, and they realized, like, well, this is probably a really good pirate tool, so maybe not.
What was this thing called? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. And there was an engineer who was at the local Atari users group that had designed it in his spare time, and he had his own little tool set on it, and it's like, well, I think I can do a little better and tailor it to exactly what I needed. So, I wish I could remember his name, but he was a sharp guy, but he was mainly a hardware person. And somewhere I still have a board or two.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, I still have an Atari 800 somewhere.
Yeah?
Maybe 2.
When was the last time you booted it up, though?
Probably, let's see. I remember where I was living, and that would have been close to 15 years ago. So it was still running, and the disk drive still read discs.
That's cool that you still have it.
Yeah, well, I've always meant to, dig it out, and I want to see if that board still works. And hopefully I still have my operating system for it. Since the assembler was called Merlin that we were using, what I wrote was called Mordred to go along with it.
Nice. Well, if you get it working, we'd love to see some pictures or whatever, screenshots or the board itself.
Yeah, I have a friend who's very into the old stuff, and he's telling me keeps reminding me I should dig it out and get it working.
Yeah, he's right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he still makes occasionally 2,600 and 7,800 games. I
Awesome.
guess there's still people interested in those.
Yeah.
I mean, original ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People make homebrew games and sell them or give them away. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what other projects did you work on that I don't know about, either because I don't know or because they didn't see the light of day?
Let's see. The first thing I did for Datasoft was their Goonies for Atari.
Oh, okay.
But I was new, and the credits were already done, so it's like I'm just here to finish up the game and get it and fix it. And so that was a few weeks of that, and it's like, and then after they had shipped it, my boss tells me, why didn't you put your name on it? It's like, no one said I could. Let's see. Yeah, I think they did a text adventure game that they got from license from somebody in England for the Never-Ending Story. When they put that out, I can't recall what I did on it, but I had to do something that made it work for the Atari.
Okay. Yeah, Datasoft 1986, Never-Ending Story. So they just put you in to finish things up, to take out bugs and do porting and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think that was at the same time when we were still working on the dungeon. And let's see, before we started working on the 16-bit version, we started the design for the arena. And so we designed the arena, which was going to be a different game in feel. It was still going to have the 3D walk around, but for the combat, but it was going to be the whole arena. Let's see, it's hard to describe because it was okay. I'm thinking of a couple of games. One I can't think of the name of. The other was I think Sid Meier had pirates, and there were things that you had like graphical cards that came up and events and things like that, and it was going to be very story driven and give you the opportunity to make a lot of manipulations to the story, to your character, to the factions that were really controlling alternate reality. And we wanted also to have multiplayer combat or over a modem.
Wow.
Yeah. and they said, how long? And we said, 18 months. And they said, we can't wait that long to put something out. Just do the dungeon on 16-bit. So somewhere I have a notebook with a design for it.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah, I've been meaning to scan that in because I know there's a group out there that still has interest in the dungeon, and they made emulators and web versions of it. And yeah. I'd love to see the design notes for that. Very cool. Well, glad you saved the stuff, even if it's not, it's in a box in the basement somewhere. At least it's still there. Many people I've talked to over the years, like, oh, I moved, I get rid of the stuff, or whatever. So you get an award just for keeping it this long. Yeah, I try to keep everything. I'll probably end up investing in whatever can read those Atari discs on the PC. I had one at one time, and I don't remember what happened to it. I could hook my PC and read those discs.
I can read Atari discs if you need help with that. I've got several systems that can do that without an issue. Yeah,
I've even kept some PC floppy drives just for that purpose.
Excellent.
Because I know they're going to be, if they aren't impossible to find, they will be.
Any other Atari projects that didn't see the light of day?
I can't think of any. I think those are the main ones. Because after we moved on to the dungeon for Amiga and ST, or PC, I don't recall doing anything else on the Atari. Let's see. I meant to. I've always meant to write the real version of Stargate Courier because my original inspiration, there was a arcade game called Bosconian,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
which is an eight-way scroller, and it had the ships in that, and which followed patterns, which is why I had mine follow patterns. And it was originally something else. And my boss at the time showed it to a company that I won't mention. And I don't know the time frame, whether they actually took the idea and ran with it and put out something that's known or not. But yeah, that game is close to what I was thinking of.
Huh.
Yeah. An 8-way scroller with a super boss.
Okay. Time Pilot?
But no names.
I'm just, all right. All right.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always been a gray area in my mind. It's like, which came first? Did they have this idea already? They could have.
Sure.
They certainly could have. They were certainly very accomplished and very sharp. I guess we'll never know.
Right.
Or I won't.
There's only so many ideas out there, really. And there's going to be some overlap, I guess. All right. So you were, at the time, at that moment, strictly an Atari guy, right? Sounds like you didn't straggle into Apple II too much, or Commodore 64 or any of that stuff.
No, I occasionally had to learn a bit because we're all trying to get the same project out and somebody has a problem and it's like, okay, well, why don't you try this? They're all 6502s.
Sure.
But I'm pretty sure the Atari came out the best because, I mean, the original was written for the Atari City, so it's going to use all the same hardware advantages, plus it's faster than the other two.
Making games then versus making games now. Which is
better? A lot more fun then.
Yeah?
A lot more fun then.
Why?
Because you had control over everything. Now you'll only be in control of a single aspect of a game. Maybe it's rendering. I've been doing a lot in audio for a long time, so I only get one little piece. In the old days, you did everything. You wrote an operating system for every game. You wrote drivers, essentially. I mean, the Atari has its own disk driver to read the disk. We don't call the operating system. And you do your own graphics. You do your own sound. You do everything. You had total control. And that was fun.
Cool.
It really was.
If you could send a message to the Atari 8-bit community, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
Thanks for keeping it alive. It's a great memory. And we're not likely to see days like that again. I mean, the best I've seen is people who get on the Raspberry Pi, where they can have total control over what their projects. That's pretty much it for my story.
All right. Awesome. Well, this is great. Thank you so very much.
Okay. Well, you're very welcome. Good night.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute, there are two ways you can help. You can help fund these interviews directly by contributing to my Patreon. A small monthly contribution will help offset the expenses of making these oral history interviews. Contribute at patreon.com/Savitz. Or make a tax-deductible contribution to the Internet Archive, a nonprofit digital library that has done incredible things to preserve computer history. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate. Thanks.